Hello dear friends, greetings to everyone. On air is Investors, your guide to the world of investments and trading. My name is Max and today we will talk about the top 10 stocks on the American stock market for the near future. This video is not an investment recommendation and is for informational purposes only. Now, let's go. Today we will start with Apple stock, which recently began striving to update its historical high, but it didn't succeed. Where will the stock go next, and is it worth considering for purchase in the near future? If so, from what levels? Let's figure it out together. Honestly, the stock doesn't lend itself to building a Fibonacci grid here, which I really like to use for analysis on different stocks. We can't build it here. What to do in situations when a stock approaches an attempt to update its local highs, but so far it is not quite succeeding. I would wait for one of two scenarios. Our first scenario is to wait for a bounce on the 4-hour time frames according to the RSI. Here we had an attempt, but we didn't have an actual signal. The signal, I remind you, is breaking the 30 RSI from below upwards, and it's even better to wait on the daily time frame. A similar signal to buy back the stock. Therefore, at the moment, I do not consider Apple shares to be among the most interesting stocks on the American market. Yes, we still have support here in the form of the quarterly moving average, which is the 55th EMA. But we also have a potentially negative factor if the 8th and 21st, that is the weekly and monthly moving averages, collapse downward, and then the movement downward may accelerate accordingly. Therefore, for those who currently hold Apple shares, I would adjust the stop loss orders here. I would set, for example, a stop from the current price somewhere around $242, maybe $243 per share. And for those who do not have a position, I would wait for one of the RSI implementations either on the daily or 4-hour frame. Okay, the next stock we have is Tesla. Let's see what's happening with it. Now, yes, in principle, the situation here might seem similar at first glance, but actually it is slightly different. We also have a high here. And if we look at the historical chart of Tesla, we will see that there is something to latch onto. So what is happening with Tesla right now? Tesla, like Apple, is trying to break into an upward channel and show a new high. If we analyze these two stocks together and assess the probabilities of which will break the high first, in my opinion, Tesla will break the high earlier. Tesla's moving averages look slightly better here, as if the price is maintaining them now. We don't have any overbought RSI. We have an attempt to break the high accordingly. Therefore, if choosing between Apple and Tesla, in my opinion, Tesla currently looks much more promising and much more interesting. There is no overheating observed on the 4-hour time frame. I try not to delve into shorter time frames. I try to work on daily and 4-hour charts, Miki. Sometimes I glance at hourly charts when speculating within 1 or 2 days, but overall my movements are slightly more medium term. They are designed to hold for an average of 3 to 4 days to 2.5 weeks. So right now, just like with Apple, I actually don't see entry points for Tesla. For those holding Tesla, I would recommend placing a protective stop somewhere around $408 per share. And if we do get a historical high update, then naturally move your stop under the support of 467, for example, somewhere around 456 per share, and then watch for the attempt to continue the upward movement. Okay. The next stock we have is Microsoft. Let's see what will happen with it. With Microsoft we have a slightly worse situation. Let's by the way take a look at the Fibonacci levels we have here, and there's quite an interesting setup with the Fibonacci. Look, here are my Fibonacci levels. There are two of them. The first Fibonacci is built on the upward trend that we had from post-COVID March of 2020 to accordingly November of 2021 on this segment. And after that, the levels were worked out very well in this area. If we construct the same Fibonacci in the opposite direction now, we will see that we have a level of 473 for the stock, which is located somewhere around here. Is such a shopo. It is essentially a resistance level, which we seem to have just passed. On the other hand, I have a trend that is based on the downward movement right here, and it works very well for us naturally with the movement on the right. That is, you can notice how, for example, the price dropped down here from this Fibonacci. Again, there was naturally a correction here and then a resumption of the upward movement. Accordingly, I am currently working with this Fibonacci. In principle, it can be updated somehow, but that's not the point. The point is that this Fibonacci now shows a level of $511 per share, and we are currently at this resistance. However, if we try to update the Fibonacci, we need to choose some next trends. The next trend could be, for example, this trend, but I don't really like it because it is disrupted in this area. And in such a situation, I would prefer to choose either the first section of the trend or the second section of the trend. Let's see what will happen if we choose the first section of the trend. Yes, I will pull it to this minimum, to this maximum. Accordingly, in this case, I get resistance at 526. And if I follow the second trend, I get around 563. In total, we have formed 3 resistance zones, or rather, I would say 4, where Microsoft is currently stuck. Within the framework of this analysis of these zones, we can highlight the following, that right now the price will actually experience resistance, and we can already see that the price has practically reached the upper resistance, bounced back, and is now fluctuating in the middle zone. An interesting level for buying Microsoft would be $467 per share. Here we can try to pick it up. At the moment, in my opinion, the rebound that we might have, for example, next week upwards is not particularly interesting because we have potential here. Well, literally about 2.5 to 3 movements upwards. I don't believe in a significantly higher value. Therefore, I have a very restrained view on Microsoft shares. Again, setting stops here for some update of highs. Generally speaking, regarding like Apple or Tesla, which we just reviewed, well, I don't believe. That is, with Microsoft, the situation is much more complicated. Our next story is a story of almost infinite growth. This is Micron. Let's take a look at its stocks. What's happening there? Namely, it is almost infinite growth starting from April. In 6 months, the stock has practically tripled in price. And being at such peaks, it would be good for us to look at the weekly time frames and see how overheated the stock is right now. That is, in this case, looking at daily charts is absolutely pointless, useless. Let's look at the weekly frames. Here, the RSI is almost 80. Not even 70. Guys, buying in such a scenario is categorically prohibited. That is, we cannot look for entry points on 4-hour charts, daily charts, or even hourly charts. We are completely prohibited from doing this naturally by the weekly frames. Moreover, I believe that in the case of a downward reversal, for example, somewhere on the daily from a 70 RSI downwards, and in this case on the weekly, we will also show a downward movement. We will have a short signal forming here. I think that in principle, Micron will be one of the best candidates for a short during the correction of the American market as a whole. The target will be the area around $160. Accordingly, on this decline, we can try to earn about 20% on such a remarkable trade. Okay, the next stock is actually directly related to the world of crypto, right? Because we all know that it doesn't really matter what MicroStrategy does. What's important is that it constantly buys Bitcoins, right? And the company MicroStrategy shows us a very, very volatile, dynamic, very volatile movements in its quotes. And we can observe here a dangerous situation, actually dangerous, including prognostically for Bitcoin. On the weekly time frame, the moving averages seem to be turning downwards. If this situation is not saved literally by the end of October, we might see a 50% drop in MicroStrategy, and as a result, I think Bitcoin could also go down by 30%. I quite believe in these rebounds in principle, that is, they can be played here. I have support, which has already become a resistance at $308 per share. By the way, I tried to play the reversal of MicroStrategy here and here. Agree, you can make about 15% in just a couple of weeks. Accordingly, my basic scenario, if we manage to return to $308 per share, I will try to play a small rebound here again, around 15% growth. Well, if this asset continues to turn downward, then I will be watching Ethereum directly. And what happens at 3,600, because I rely more on Ethereum than on Bitcoin. Although in general, we can also look at the dynamics of Bitcoin itself. Here, again, I have a major support located around 107, maybe slightly lower. You can also draw a range of 104,500 per Bitcoin. But if we break this downward, then everything is very bad. I think that even the psychological level of 100,000 will not save us, and we can actually fall very hard here, right? So please be careful with MicroStrategy stocks. They can both significantly add profit to the portfolio and significantly take it away. Therefore, anything below $308 per share is, for me, an area of uncertainty. And the next global level for me, for MicroStrategy, is $131 per. Okay, let's look at the stock. Let's look further. What's happening with Google? Specifically, Alphabet's shares are showing an update of historical quotes. On the weekly time frame, we had a false short signal that didn't work, right? So here's the story. Look, when our RSI first shows a short signal breaking below 70 and then immediately reverses it literally within 1 or 2 candles, here it reversed on the very next one. This is a false short, it's acknowledged, and naturally all shorts here should be closed immediately. Here it's more of a long story, therefore for Google shares I allow for a higher high than for any other stock we are considering today. Just potentially, let's say if we enter this position now, I would set some level below 270 for stop adjustment. I would set the first stop loss around $240, for example, right? And the scenario is like this. Upon reaching $268 per share, I would move my stop to the break-even zone, to the zero zone, and then at a pace of 4%, for example, maybe 3.5%, maybe even 3%, but it's probably better to go with 3.5%. Yes, I think it's necessary to set it a bit higher here, maybe at 3.6. I would move upwards, right? That is in several iterations until we actually have a market correction. And it may not happen for quite a while, as we know. Therefore, Google is probably a long-term favorite, in my opinion, among today's stocks. And I would take a closer look at it accordingly. Add it. Okay? The next story is directly about raw materials. Let's see what's happening with the main uranium representative. First of all, let's not forget that the price of uranium has literally doubled in price since April of this year. Tripled in price, guys. I apologize. We had plus 200%, and in such a trend, of course, it's best to look for similar moments when we have a correction, and we can, for example, pick up a long on the 4-hour frame by RSI. But our story is about Cameco shares. This is not a story about an ETF. Overall, Cameco reflects the dynamics of Iran. We stood on the 55th moving average here. And unfortunately, not yet. We have a 30th RSI. At the 30th RSI, I would definitely consider this stock for a long position. So enable the classic RSI on the 4-hour frame with the 14th period and just watch for when we reach the 30th level here. Then you can try to take this asset for a reversal. For now, I think it's too early. Although, for example, some hourly charts are already showing a long attempt, but again, guys, in such a nervous market as now, I try not to use hourly frames. So please look at Cameco on the 4-hour frame to try to take it long, okay? What else do we have left today from the assets? Let's take a look. The next story is JP Morgan. Let's check the banking sector. What might be interesting in it? So where? Right here. Yes, excellent. JPM, and let's take a look. We have two wonderful Fibonacci levels set up for JPM. I won't go into too much detail. What's important is that we have global support at the level of $283 to $286 per share. In fact, we went through this range, hesitated a bit here, lingered June, July, August, that is the summer months, and then we still went up. Look at this story. If we manage to reach $285 on average and show a reversal here, I would call it a very interesting entry point. Right now, in my opinion, it's not worth playing anything. In this case, it's also not worth playing the 4-hour RSI. On the daily charts, if we have a 30th RSI, then the price will already be around 285. And there, guys, we will be watching for the assets reversal with you. If a breakdown happens downward, it will be a disaster, and most likely you can confidently open a short position here and profit from the decline of the stock. What else do we have that's interesting? Probably the most exciting, friends, is the double ETF on Ethereum. The ticker is ETHU. Let's take a look, please. Yes, double leverage, right? Naturally, it's embedded here. Let's take another look at the dynamics of Ethereum USDT. Look, what's interesting here on the daily is that you can play reversals on the RSI, which actually give us a great, very powerful story. 17% in the double ETF, you would have earned about 35% here. You can also play Fibonacci here, which I have marked at the level up to 3,600. Look, here's the bounce at 3,600. There wasn't a 30th RSI, but there was a Fibonacci level at 3,600, and the bounce happened too. Maybe not as strong, but 15%. In the ETF, you would have earned 30%. Therefore, the basic scenario here, in my opinion, is the following. We are watching how Ethereum will perform at 3,600 in the coming days. And if indeed a reversal happens here, similar to this one, right? Or maybe we will see the 30th RSI here, which is unlikely. I am more inclined towards a reversal, specifically with Fibonacci. Then, friends, I suggest playing out this reversal through this ETF, ETHU, and try. Here you don't need to look at the levels. So look at the levels directly on the Ethereum chart and make the purchase decision on ETHU. Here I think it might be possible to make 25 to 30% in case of a reversal. If Ethereum does break the 3600 mark downwards, then guys, it will be a very bad situation. Most likely it might even be considered for a short, but more on that in the next episode regarding stock number 10. We will write about it this week on our Twitter. Please subscribe. The link will be in the description of this video. And this was Max with you. And this is Investors, your Gano Piston SAS, your guide to the world of investments and trading.
See you soon. Bye bye.